Council members, we are getting ready to start our special call Rules Committee meeting. And the candidates for the General Sessions Judge vacancy, which is Anna Escobar, Newton S. Holliday III, and Nick Leonardo, Councilman Nick Leonardo. If you all will go outside of the chambers, and you will be called in alphabetical order. No. Okay. Members of the Rules Committee, pursuant to Rule 44 of the Council Rules of Procedure, we are gathered here at this time to conduct interviews of the nominees for the vacant judicial seat in Division 3 of the General Sessions Court. This vacancy resulted from the selection of Judge Angelita Dalton to the Circuit Court of Davidson County and her subsequent resignation from the General Sessions bench. We have 3 nominees to succeed Judge Dalton. The nominees in alphabetical order are Anna Escobar, Newton S. Holliday III, and Councilman Nick Leonardo. The Rules Committee will now conduct its interviews in alphabetical order. And at this time, we need to have Ms. Anna Escobar to come before the committee. Okay, where are the 3 questions? Good evening, Ms. Anna Escobar, Attorney Anna Escobar. I have 3 questions before you begin, and that is, these are required qualifications prescribed in the Constitution for the state of Tennessee, and that is, have you been licensed to practice law by the Supreme Court of Tennessee for no less than 5 years? Okay. And have you been a resident of Davidson County for at least 5 years? Okay. And are you not less than 30 years of age or more than 65 years of age? Okay. Attorney Escobar, you are now ready to present before the committee.
I'd like to introduce myself. Many of you may remember me from when I interviewed in May, and many of you have my resume, so I'll briefly go over it. But I've lived in Nashville approximately 43 years. I went to Vanderbilt University for undergrad. I went to George Washington University for law school. I've been a lawyer for 22 years. I've been a public defender, been in private practice. I was a DA. Then I went back to private practice. I was the court Metro Council clerk, and I left there to go to the administrative offices of the courts where I was deputy director, and I'm back at the DA's office now. Public service is very important to me. I've been on many nonprofit boards, and those can be seen on my resume. I've also been on many government boards. I've been on the Board of Equalization, the Davidson County Election Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Judicial Nominating Commission for the state. Currently, I am an ethics interviewer for the Nashville for the Board of Professional Responsibility. I'm a member of the Nashville Bar Association. I'm a member of the Oak Hill School Board, and I'm also a board member for the YWCA. I have been on the YWCA for 6 years on the board, and I have been chair of the Advocacy Committee for the last 3 years. This court in particular is a domestic violence court, so I want to highlight my experience in domestic violence. I have defended many people accused of domestic violence. I have defended people who have been given or have had orders of protections filed against them. I've also prosecuted on behalf of victims. I was the team leader for domestic violence for the Office of the District Attorney. I've prosecuted DV for almost 3 years. I'm currently prosecuting on a felony level, and those cases include domestic violence. But when I was on the domestic violence team in general sessions, I did things such as screen cases with the police department to determine whether or not there was sufficient evidence to prosecute the case. I did indictments. I supervised 9 attorneys. I went to court in general sessions, criminal court, and Second Circuit, and I met with hundreds of victims. I went to many DV seminars and trainings. One of those trainings, I learned about strangulation. I came back to Nashville and realized that we weren't doing a great job about prosecuting strangulations. So I convinced Diane Lance, I just bothered her until she gave in, and we were able to have our first strangulation summit that involved healthcare workers, the police department, and the DA's office to help us recognize the signs of strangulation. I also introduced the strangulation supplement to our office, and now the police department has actually taken that over, and it's online. Because of my work with strangulation in 2016, I won the Nashville Coalition Against Domestic Violence Award for the Outstanding Local Official Award. As a DA, I also co-founded an organization called Dando Valor. When there was a new administration with our president, we were worried about immigrant victims coming forward. So with the collaboration with the police department, the therapists at the police department, and the DA's office, including Victim Witness, who spoke Spanish, we went out into the community. We've gone to various fairs. We wanted victims of domestic violence to see the faces that would be helping them through all the steps of the process. And we've gotten a lot of support through the police department. While I was chair of advocacy, I noticed while I was prosecuting that the harassment law had not been updated to include new technology. The law back then read that you could harass somebody by continuously calling them, but it did not include texts and social media. And as you know, young people now text and don't really call people. So we, with the YWCA, we had the law changed, and that passed in 2016. So I'm very proud of that. As I said, I've screened cases, I've prosecuted cases, I've negotiated cases, I've defended cases. I've been on at the federal and state level. I've had jury trials. I've had 3 domestic violence jury trials, one of which was a strangulation, 2 of which were homicides. I've got 2 homicide trials coming up. So as you can see, domestic violence has been a big part of my career. So I would appreciate your consideration when you decide to fill this domestic violence slot.
Thank you, Attorney Escobar. And I'm going to open it up now for Rules Committee members and members of the council to ask Attorney Escobar questions. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Councilman Mendez.
Thanks for being here, Ms. Escobar.
Thank you.
One thing I wanted to maybe have you talk for a second about is I think a lot of us think about general sessions judges doing a lot of different things,
Yes.
But this is Judge Dalton's court was a specialty court for domestic violence only, which is why I assume you're talking about the domestic violence experience. Can you talk about why there is a specialty court in Davidson County for domestic violence?
Absolutely. So I've actually, you know, the history and the evolution of domestic violence has been very interesting. Nashville, when I go to seminars, it turns out Nashville's pretty much in the cutting edge, so we should be very proud. So there are so many partners in the domestic violence system, I'll call it. And what I have learned from prosecuting domestic violence is that not, you know, one sole partner isn't going to solve this problem. It's the work of an entire system. And one of those partners in that system has to be an informed and educated judge. I think with somebody accused of domestic violence, such an accusation is paralyzing to their life. You know, they could lose their job just on the arrest. They can lose custody of their children. They can lose their gun rights if they're found guilty. In some places, they can be asked to leave their homes if they're renting. So a defendant needs to know that their case will be heard quickly and efficiently because it really does have such an impact in their life. And also they need to know they're walking into a forum that's neutral and fair. So that way, if the judge were to find them guilty, then they'll respect that finding and perhaps do whatever it is that the judge has asked them to do, such as batterers intervention programs. Now, for a victim, it is said that it takes 7 times for somebody to actually leave a battering relationship. So when the police comes in, we don't know where they are on that journey. And so much about domestic violence, obviously, is about power and control. And so if a victim walks in where they finally have gotten the courage to come to court, and they walk in and they feel powerless, then we have defeated this whole idea. So they need to feel like they have power over their case, that they're respected, that they're being heard, that they're in a serious, fair forum where they can explain what has happened to them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Fabian Bedney.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be here in front of you. I mean, obviously, you have been recommended by the bar. I mean, your peers think very highly of you. You bring in your expertise at the prosecution, so that's an important point of view in how to be a good judge. I was just looking at the review of a federal judge at the Senate,
Yes.
where the person didn't know many of the things that a lawyer is supposed to do. So I'm sure you, having been on both sides, bring a world of knowledge. Now, the part that I am, on top of all that, the part that I know that you will be extremely helpful if you get elected, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about it, is you being an immigrant, bringing that cultural competency. I couldn't tell you all the times that I'm in a room with powerful people. They're talking about something they know nothing about, and then I'll say, well, why didn't you do this? And they look at me funny like they never thought of that. But they didn't, not because they are mean or anything, it's just they don't have that experience or they haven't gone through that. They don't really know what it is to be an immigrant, to what it is to be a Latino in Nashville, Middle Tennessee. So that's a unique set of skills that you bring. I don't think we have any other Latino judge. So it's not that we are trying to fill a quota, but it is kind of crazy from my point of view in a city where we are over 10% of the population. There is nobody that can speak for us at the judicial level. So if you could talk about some of the problems you have seen at the bench coming from people that really don't understand the immigrant experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have been practicing law since 1995, and when I first started practicing, there weren't that many clients or defendants who spoke Spanish. And then as the construction boom came, you saw more and more, and it was interestingly more men. And at first, judges were not using certified interpreters. And oftentimes I'd get called to interpret, which thank goodness now the Administrative Office of the Courts has stepped in and now they certify interpreters. But it is, I think, very important for a judge to understand that, first of all, that yelling at someone loudly and speaking slowly is not going to make that person understand English, and being sensitive to that and respecting somebody's name, culture, language is very important to set that tone of decorum. Also, to be able to recognize when an interpreter is not doing a good job. Like, I don't speak Swahili, but sometimes you can tell when an interpreter, you know, is not translating or interpreting correctly. You know, when, you know, the person has spoken for 5 minutes and then the interpreter only says 3 words. That's not a correct interpretation. And so I think a judge needs to be aware of that and be able to call out that interpreter and make sure that a fair interpretation is being done. Also, immigrants have had negative experiences with the police in their countries. And so they may be afraid to come to court. Their reactions toward the police may be a little bit different. And just being aware that many immigrants come from a place where police are more aggressive and not above board, I think is important.
Okay. Councilwoman Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Escobar, being in here. And, you know, obviously you are very passionate about this court's mission, you know, domestic violence. And having been in, you know, both prosecuting side and defending side, and what do you think the most important qualification as a judge, and what kind of judge will you be if you were to sit on that specific bench?
Okay, thank you. I think the most important quality is patience. And because this is the most emotional day for a victim or a defendant. I mean, these are people who loved each other, who have a family, who, you know, have a past together. So it's a little bit different than a crime with strangers. So I think patience and listening and not jumping the gun is what really makes the difference for, you know, for that decorum and that neutral forum for both victim and defendant.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I think I'm on. Thank you, Ms. Escobar, for being here. The question I've got is, you had said something about best practices that people from outside of Nashville look at Nashville as having a good example. Are we talking about the court system and everything else connected to it? And what makes us so much? What makes other people look at Nashville and say, "Wait a minute, we've got things going together on this one"?
Okay. Well, we are lucky to have...
and you can face ahead. That's probably easier.
We are lucky to have the Metro Police Department investing a lot of resources with domestic violence. Not only do patrol officers take these reports and make arrests, but we have a domestic violence unit of detectives. And within that unit, there are therapists, and they come... They have been given a grant, and so victims can come and get that specialized therapy and preparation for court to help them kind of deal with the situation. In my office, the Office of the District Attorney, my boss, General Funk, started a program about 2 years ago where we call victims 24 hours after a arrest, and we ask them to come to the courthouse so that they can meet with us and bring any evidence that may be involved in the case. So this has been very helpful. Because we're able to gather evidence, take pictures, and kind of help the victim not be as nervous about coming to court. We explain the process. We also have about 10 victim witness coordinators designated for domestic violence, and these ladies call the victim, let them know what court dates are coming up, what to expect, what to bring, that kind of thing. And a wonderful thing that we have is the Gene Crow Advocacy Center through the Office of Family Safety. So at that center, you can go and get safety planning, find out resources, and victims are able to sit in their office while court is going on. So in the morning of court, a victim goes to the Gene Crow Advocacy Center, the DA meets with the victim, and then the DA goes and does all the work in court, so a victim doesn't have to sit right next to the person accused of domestic violence during the court. Sometimes, I think in the past, it was seen that there was intimidation that could occur from the defendant, the accused, and their family. So this relieves that, and while they're waiting for court, they can, like I said, get resources. And the exciting thing for Nashville in 2018 is the Family Justice Center that will be opened. That will bring not only domestic violence resources, but also for child sex abuse and child physical abuse will be also seen there and triaged there. So I think those are all really exciting things that we have.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Schulman. Are there any other council members with questions for Attorney Escobar at this time? Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you, Attorney Escobar, and we will be in continuous communications for this process, and we will see you back here at the council at the first meeting in January. Is that when the vote is? Okay, thank you. Okay, I am ready for Attorney Newton Holliday. I'm gonna keep my cough drop. The middle, yes. Good evening, Attorney Newton Holliday. I am going to ask you a series of questions in regards to the qualifications set forth by the Constitution of the State of Tennessee as a candidate for this judicial vacancy. The first question is, have you been licensed to practice law by the Supreme Court of Tennessee for no less than 5 years? Okay. And have you been a resident of Davidson County, Nashville, Davidson County, for no less than 5 years? Okay. And are you no less than 30 years of age or more than 65 years of age? Okay. All right. Well, those are the qualifications which you meet. And at this time, we will open up for your presentation to council members. If you can adjust that mic.
Lifelong resident of Nashville, Davidson County.
Can I hear?
There was a brief.
Mr. Newton, yeah, that may help.
All right. Is that better?
Can everyone hear? Okay.
Okay. I'm a lifelong resident of Nashville, Davidson County. I was asked the question, why did you want to become a lawyer? And in 1962, we were on a family vacation in Washington, D.C. And it was a fraternity convention. And my father said, come over here, let me introduce you to someone. And that someone was Thurgood Marshall. And from that point on, I've always wanted to become a lawyer. It's ironic. I went to school in Texas, in Houston, Texas, Texas Southern University, which is called Thurgood Marshall School of Law. I graduated from there, came back to my home state of Tennessee in Nashville, and began as a law clerk at the firm of Petway, Blackshear, and Smith. Mr. Petway is one of your former council members. I clerked for them for several years, took the bar, passed the bar, then became an associate attorney. I did that for quite some time. During the course of changing of law offices, due to the death of the senior partners, became a senior attorney with the firm of Petway, Blackshear, Kane, and Holliday. Currently, I'm in solo practice in my own office here on Church Street. I've been practicing law in the areas. Because I started out in general practice, I had a very wide variety of issues of law that I've practiced in. When you start as a young attorney, you have to kind of build your practice up, and that's what I did. Now, exclusively, I practice in the area of criminal defense. So I have worked both on the civil side in all the courts in Davidson County and surrounding areas, as well as the criminal courts as well.
Okay. Attorney Newton, I am going to open it up now for council members to ask questions. And the first council member in the queue is Councilman at Large Bob Mendez. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here. Really, two questions. One, I assume it's a typo, but one of the questions in the package asks number 17 whether you possess the physical and mental ability to perform the essential duties of the position, and you answered no.
No, it should have been yes.
All right.
I have no disabilities.
All right. I'm sorry to ask. I assume that was just a typo, but thank you. And then the second thing, that as you know, this court has been the General Sessions Specialty Court for Domestic Violence, and wonder if you could talk about your experience in working on domestic violence cases.
Well, in the course of just a general practice as a criminal defense attorney, there is one floor, which is jokingly called the love docket, and that's the domestic violence portion of the General Sessions courts. I practiced before all three.
Attorney Newton, yes. Can you move the mic a little bit closer to you?
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yes, I practice in all three domestic violence courts. Have assisted victims and both defendants in that court.
How many cases, roughly, would you say you've worked on in the domestic violence General Sessions Court?
In 1 year or in lifetime?
The last 5 years.
In the last 5 years, 200-300 cases.
In the domestic violence court? All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Mendez. Councilwoman Mina Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Mr. Newton. Not Newton, Holiday. Sorry about that. Could you tell me about your understanding of this specific court and judges, what this specific court does, of your understanding, and why do you think you will be the best person to take that judgeship at this particular time?
Well, General Sessions courts traditionally hear civil cases that are below $25,000 and criminal cases. Now, in the criminal arena, a General Sessions court can hear and try misdemeanor cases. However, if the person is charged with a felony, that person is only entitled to what is called a preliminary hearing, and it becomes a probable cause hearing. General Sessions judges make those probable cause rulings, and the next checks and balances on the legal system would go directly to the grand jury thereafter. I think that I why I wanted to be a judge was because I've given to this community has given to me for over 30 years in the practice of law. And I just feel that now, when I was brought up as a young lawyer, I was taught to always give back to the community. So I would like to give back my services, my time, my attention to the General Sessions Court and expertise.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Mendes cited this is a specialty court,
Yes.
and not regular, the other division. So I'm just kind of curious about your understanding of this specific division.
Okay. This specific, the General Sessions Courts also issue what's called orders of protection to any woman can come in ex parte, which means come along, speak to a judge, tell them what the situation is, the relationship that they're in, and that judge will in turn issue a order of protection. After 10 days, that the person that the order of protection has been issued against has an opportunity to come into court and have their say, because it was an ex parte hearing in the beginning. The court wants to hear both sides of the case, wants to hear evidence from both sides before a ruling is made.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Mina Johnson. Councilman at Large John Cooper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. For those of us who are not lawyers, if you didn't mind helping us a little bit, given your long experience in courtrooms, what would you say we should be looking for in making a great judge for Metro?
Or making a change?
Making a great judge. What should we be looking for in terms of selecting a great judge for our city?
What judges in our judicial system are very important. They have to be impartial. They have to listen to both sides of the parties. They have to make a decision based solely on the evidence and testimony that's taken in a hearing. Good judges are good listeners. I'm a very good listener. They have to have what's called a judicial temperament. You can't let just little normal things get you upset. And just basically keep control of your courtroom.
I appreciate your insight. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Holliday, you noticed, I noticed in one of the things that you had received an award from the Supreme Court for pro bono work in criminal defense. Could you tell the folks here a little bit more about what the award was for?
Well, sometimes clients can't afford to pay you your full fee, and I will take that opportunity sometimes to give back and go ahead and assist them to their cases concluded, whether I've been paid or not. So certain number of hours I just dictate per month that I'm going to give back as far as pro bono. Sometimes ministers will call me that I've represented, ask me to represent people who are their parishioners or their church members. And I don't have any problem doing that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Tanaka Virtue, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to expound upon my colleague, Councilman Cooper's question. As a prospective judge, what do you consider your strengths and weaknesses?
Well, my strengths are I've been a trial attorney for over 30 years, so I've tried cases all the way up from murder cases on down to domestic violence and even lesser things, thefts, things of that nature. I've pretty much have a lot of in-court trial experience. Then I can bring that to the judicial bench.
Did that answer your question, Councilwoman Virtue? Okay. Are there any other questions for Attorney Newton Holliday? See no other members of the council seeking to be recognized. Mr. Newton, thank you so much for coming before the committee. We are going to be voting on January the 2nd, the first meeting in January. And we thank you for coming this evening.
All right, and I'd like to thank the committee for having me here today.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, the committee will hear from Councilman Attorney Nick Leonardo. Good evening, Councilman Attorney Leonardo.
Good evening.
I have a series of questions that we first need to ask and have answered before we start the process for your presentation, and that is, the qualifications prescribed in the Constitution of the State of Tennessee says that the court says you should be licensed to practice law by the Supreme Court of Tennessee for no less than 5 years. Have you been licensed to practice law by the Supreme Court of Tennessee for no less than 5 years?
Yes, ma'am, Council Lady.
Okay. The second question is, have you been a resident of Nashville, Davidson County for no less than 5 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the third question is, are you no less than 30 years of age and no more than 65 years of age?
I am.
Okay. Seeing that you meet those qualifications, at this time, we will hear your presentation to the committee.
Thank you very much, Council Lady Johnson. Can everybody hear me? Is it okay? It's a little different here. So I'm native Nashvilleian. I was born and raised in East Nashville back before, it was as popular as it is today, and very humble upbringing. I went to Father Ryan High School, rode the number 20 Scott and the number 4 Shelby to get there, which is the numbers haven't changed, they're the same today. And then after I graduated from Father Ryan High School, I attended the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I was in a major, political science major, graduated in the honors program there. And then from there, I went on to the Nashville School of Law, which I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to attend Nashville School of Law, and I graduated from there in 2003. At the time I graduated, I was a law clerk in criminal court, which is it's a level higher than the General Sessions Court, where we heard, all kinds of, murder cases, and, there were death penalty cases and the like, and I did that job for a few years, but as soon as I was licensed to practice law, I began practicing law, and I've been actively engaged in the practice of law uninterrupted ever since, and I'm in my 15th year at this point in time. I'm a general practitioner. I like to call myself a trial attorney, which is it's really suited for General Sessions Court because there's a lot of different hats that you have to wear as a General Sessions judge. Part of the job is, criminal, as we all know. The other part of it is also civil. And so I've handled, criminal and civil cases. I've averaged about 1 jury trial a year. Nowadays, we have things like mediation and another alternative dispute resolution committees that make it to where a lot of times these cases are settling, and so you don't really get to go to a jury trial, especially not necessarily in this county, because everybody's so eager to work, and they're able to work with you, and you're able to bring out a resolution that benefits your client. I have practiced in front of every judge in Davidson County except one, and that includes both General Sessions and state trial courts, and the one I have not had the opportunity to yet is Chancellor Young, but he just hadn't been there long enough for me, the way the cases rotate, for me to get in there. I've also done a lot of administrative practice, too. I've gone before several different beer boards in Middle Tennessee. I've also gone before the Civil Service Commission, and I've also had some litigation before TDEC and administrative law judges. Most recently, I was involved in some litigation where I was trying to keep a Publix from being built on a wetland in Cookeville. So I've had, some administrative practice as well. I also am very active in the community. I have been involved with the YMCA's for a long time. I've been on the board of the East Nashville YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club at Preston Taylor, the Downtown YMCA board. I was the past chair of the YMCA board of directors, and I'm currently still on the Downtown Y board and actually work with this program called Why We Can't Wait. It's named after Dr. King's book, and we take the young men from Napier Sudicum homes during the summer times and teach them public speaking, teach them how to dress, how to treat women, and we go to various colleges and the like. So I've been the one that's been able to achieve the funding for those programs. And most recently, I had put my name into consideration for the vacant criminal court judge seat vacated by Judge Wyatt. I went through the Judicial Nominating Commission, which is 11 lawyers from all around the state that you don't know, and they get you up there and they ask you a bunch of questions in front of everyone else. It's a pretty intimidating process, but I was one of 3 names to be submitted to the governor for his consideration, and after the governor interviewed all 3 of us, he selected Angie Dalton, which was a great selection, and so it was definitely a very humbling experience and a very good experience to have made it that far. And as I think about it, I'm not so sure that there's been another council member in the history of Nashville other than Mike Jamison who has made it through the Judicial Nominating Commission. So as I sit here today, I am applying for the vacancy in General Sessions Court created by Judge Dalton, and I appreciate your time and being here and your consideration.
Thank you, Councilman Attorney Leonardo. Are there any council members at this time wishing to be recognized? Councilwoman Mina Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Councilman Leonardo. Could you tell me your understanding of this specific court and why at this particular time you will be the best suited for that position?
Okay, and that's a great question. So General Sessions Court is the people's court. It's the court of first impression. I mean, I would say that 90% of the folks in Davidson County, if they go into a courtroom or if they have any contact with the court system, it is General Sessions Court. Here recently, in the last few years, the General Sessions judges, there's 11 of them, and they used to rotate these dockets. They've actually started now to where they create a team of judges, and so there are 3 judges that comprise this team, and they hear domestic violence cases about 8 months out of the year, and then they also go into a civil rotation for 4 months out of the year. This particular court does deal with both felony and misdemeanor domestic violence cases. They only have jurisdiction to resolve the misdemeanor domestic violence cases. The other thing that they do a lot of, and it's early in the morning, they start about 8:30, they hear orders of protection. And one of the key things that can happen in an order of protection is that the judge can award spousal support, the judge could award child support, the judge could also deal with child custody or parenting time within the confines of that order of protection. So it's very important to not only know the criminal side of the law, but to also know the family side of the law. And I've done quite a bit of family practice, and so I'm very familiar with what needs to happen in that regard. There's been a lot of great advances in domestic violence court here in Davidson County over the past few years with the Gene Crow Advocacy Center. They're changing the way that they're doing things, and I think it's much better than it used to be, because a lot of times we would have the victims or alleged victims sitting in the court with the defendants and the lawyers weighing in on it, and it's not really conducive to those specific kind of cases. And so there is a heavy domestic violence caseload. The district attorney's office is doing much better with the way that they're handling those cases. Now the victims come in the mornings and they're down at the Gene Crow Advocacy Center, and then the district attorneys, the assistants, as well as the victim witness coordinators are down there, meeting with them, and they're getting an early start on that, and then they come back up, and so it seems to run a little bit better. I think that I would be the most qualified at this particular time, because I've had experience in all types of those of the law, and I have continuously practiced law for the last 15 years, and I've had hundreds of domestic violence cases. And I have not been a prosecutor. I've been a defense attorney, but I think both prosecutors and defense attorneys would agree that everyone that's charged with a crime isn't guilty. And so I think that it's important for a judge to be able to protect not only the defendant's rights, but also the rights of the victim in these sorts of cases. And as I've practiced law all around Middle Tennessee, and I've gone to different courtrooms all over the state, you see good things, you see good practices, and you see some that are not so great. And so I think that I have the ability to bring the best practices that I've seen into this courtroom, but also be able to deal with the orders of protection. I don't know if you remember, but there was a big to-do at the budget time because they wanted to move the orders of protection from General Sessions Court over here to state trial courts. Well, I will volunteer to hear all of the orders of protection, and if I'm done one day early or something like that, I don't mind picking up, cases from other courts. But so that, and also the fact that this is a really tight period of time to which you have to run a race. Okay, January 3rd would leave, maybe less than 90 days before early voting starts. And so you're also sitting here tonight, as I've sat and made these decisions, and part of it is, who is the best candidate, but can this person also get elected? And I think that that's another consideration that you have to have. And I've run, a couple of contested races, and so I think that I could also be elective, and I could also be fair and impartial and be respectful and complement the judiciary and bring the attributes that I've possessed as a lawyer who's never been disciplined or had any trouble as a lawyer to the bench in a respectful manner and an efficient manner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Nina Johnson. Are there any other council members? Okay. Councilman Jim Schulman.
I didn't know you were going to call on me. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Councilman, tell me a little bit about your training as a Rule 31 mediator and how you think that might help you in terms of if you got the seat on the bench.
Thank you, Councilman Shulman. So we have the, some of you may not know about, have heard about this, but there's it's called a Supreme Court Rule 31. You can become a mediator, and I am a listed civil and family mediator, which you have to take a big long class and go to, and it's court ordered in family law. And so, being able to fashion a remedy for people a lot of times, because this is a very emotional court. Domestic violence court is very emotional. I mean, not only do the criminally accused are emotional for a lot of reasons, but so is the alleged victim in these cases. And so you have to be able to understand what, both sides and from where they're coming from, and fashion a remedy that you think would be appropriate, because a lot of what we see, is these bond conditions. As soon as you're arrested on domestic violence charge, there are conditions of bond that do not allow you to return home. Okay, and so you have people that have been married 30 years, 40 years that get charged with misdemeanor domestic assault. And so to be able to weigh in and to some degree and be able to help people resolve those issues has been a good experience as a mediator. And I've done several family mediations. And of course, that's also, to be a good mediator, you got to know the law. And so it's the same thing with the orders of protection. I mean, there's a lot of child custody, as I've said, a lot of child support and things like that. And these decisions are made on the fly. I mean, there are a ton of people in this AA Birch building every morning. And so the court does not have the opportunity, just because of the sheer numbers, to spend 45 minutes or an hour on every case. And so it moves quickly. And so the better you know the law and the quicker that you can get to the facts of the case, I think be able to help people efficiently and effectively, which is the goal of General Sessions Court.
Okay. One more question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right. So it sounds also like, because of you've been a Rule 31 mediator, but you've also been in different courts in different places. Obviously, you said that General Sessions Court is a place where a lot of most people, that's their first experience, and it may be their only experience with the court system. What have you learned in terms of your practice that would help kind of alleviate those people's concerns as they come into court, maybe for the first time?
That's a great question, Councilman Shulman. One thing that I will tell you is that in criminal court here in Davidson County, we have an incredibly professional criminal court bench. And, sometimes it's just the truth. There are judges that scream at people. There are judges that act too busy to hear their cases. And so this is, the face of the judiciary is directly on you and the people that appear before you. And so I think that to be a temperate, to be an impartial judge, to be a judge that listens and doesn't hurry through. I mean, you're hired, you're elected to sit there, and if we got to sit there till 10 o'clock, that's fine with me. I think a lot of times judges hurry through to the dockets and don't necessarily give people, their day in court. Court. And so, I mean, it's just like from a traffic ticket perspective. General Sessions Court also handles traffic dockets. And I think we've all been to traffic court. Maybe we thought the judge wasn't fair. Maybe the judge didn't listen to you. So I think it's very important to be able to listen to the people that come before you. But also, I think part of what's missing in our judiciary, just here in Davidson County, is that aside from 2 or 3 judges, no one's involved in the community. And I plan to change that. If I'm fortunate enough to get appointed judge, I intend to continue picking up trash on the weekends. I'm going to continue to be involved in the community to change the way that maybe people in the community view judges as maybe they're better than us or higher, than now. And I think that if we could have judges in our community making positive impacts on a regular basis, I think that would also help with the whole way people view judges here in Nashville and Davidson County, and I intend to do that if I'm fortunate enough to be appointed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman at Large Schulman. Are there any other council members seeking to be recognized at this time? Seeing none, Councilman Attorney Leonardo, we will be making a decision at the first meeting in January 2nd. So we will see you back at this time, and thank you for taking the time to come before this committee and share your background and experiences.
Well, and thank you all for being here and doing it. It's a very important decision. It's a very important job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I guess we don't have any further business before this committee. So at this time, unless there's something else, Mr.
No, I just
Vice
appreciate
Chair.
everybody coughing so much during these meetings. I think everybody
know,
in this
that's
room
right.
is sick.
I had to take my cough drops too. But at this time, the meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.